Okay, so welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third webinar organized by Arafura and Timor Sea's Ecosystem Action at C2 and Oil Spill Response Limited, OSRL. So this is the third webinar of the year. Actually, this is the second to the last webinar scheduled for this year. At C2 and OSRL has collaborated this year to deliver quarterly webinars. So basically, this is our second to the last webinar of the year. So I am Norman Lorica Ramos from Oil Spill Response Limited, the facilitator for this webinar. Our hope is to share learning and have productive discussions through this webinar. Before we start, I would like to lay the ground rules of this webinar. And please take note that our webinar is also streamed live in at C2 YouTube channel. So before we start, I would like to request everybody or everyone to be respectful at all times. Please avoid using all caps letters in your chat box when communicating. Please keep your microphones at mute and videos off at all times. Please type your messages or questions in the chat box and we will attend to them. We will try to answer all your questions during the plenary towards the end of this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available. And actually, you can access at C2's YouTube channel for the recording as well. And you can also visit OSRL's website for the recording of this webinar. Later on, we will share with you a QR code or the link for you to complete the attendance and the feedback form. So towards the middle and the end, so we will share that. Now, if we have a lot of questions and we are not able to answer that in the plenary, no worries about that because we will release an online article wherein we will answer those questions that we have missed answering during the plenary. Right? So just to quickly share with you the Zoom functionality. So what's important for you as participants of this webinar is the chat box function. This is where you're going to write or type in your questions about the topics that we are discussing for today's webinar. And for this webinar today, we have the honor and pleasure to have the resource speakers. We have Mr. Almerindo Oliveira de Silva, the National Project Coordinator of Timor-Leste of the UNDP Timor-Leste. We are also joined by our very own OSRL Response Manager, Mr. Ali Haider Alatas, who will talk about the net environmental benefit analysis and spill impact mitigation analysis. And it is also our pleasure and honor to have Mr. Johnson Maren, Senior Pollution Officer from the Papua New Guinea National Maritime Safety Authority. Mr. Maren will share a case study from Papua New Guinea. So to start off this webinar, Mon Almer will provide us an overview of the ATSEA. So Mon Almer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Norman. And good afternoon, evening, and good morning for everyone around this event for the webinar. So my name is Almerindo Oliveira da Silva as the National Project Coordinator, UNDP Timor-Leste. So I will run through this the introduction. So please, Casey, you can help me for the presentation, sharing the slide. Yeah, as all of you know, there's the project overview for this the Arafura and Timor Sea Ecosystem Action Phase 2, or we call it the ATSEA 2. That is since last 2014. Then it's in the first phase. Then second phase is start on 2019 to 2024. So this is the second phase of the GF finance. UNDP supports ATSEA program, building foundation result is realized in the first phase 2009 to 2014. So we work in the 4 countries. It is Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, and Australia as well as an observer. Then the implementation of the activity is 3 countries. Then 1 Australia is observer. The main activities to work for is overexploitation of marine resource, loss or degradation of the habitats and biodiversity, land and marine basic pollution. That's the one main we do in the webinar today, and the climate change. Next, please. Yeah, the project is, that we have 3 major components and 9 expected outcome and 23 activities that we need to achieve. So ATSEA 2 project is we have a component outcomes and output. The component 1 is regional and the national local government. Local governance for large marine ecosystem management. This is, you have a 4 point there. The point 1 is regional and national mechanism. Second is strengthening institutional and human resource capacity. Third one is a better understanding of the climate change impact. For the last one is the updated TDA, SAP, and then NAPS. Component 2 is this improving large marine ecosystem carrying capacity to sustain, provisioning, regulating, and supporting ecosystem service. 4 points here. One is improved management of the fishes and coastal resource, the host trees existing built. Second position, the ICM incorporating climate change adaptation implemented at local level. Component 3 is the knowledge management. Is we have 1 point here, is the improved monitoring of status of ATS region and dissemination of the information. Next, please. Next, please. Christian.
I think we have some intermittent line with Mon Almer.
Yeah, may I continue, Norman?
Yeah, go ahead, Cassie. Yeah.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
I apologize because, yeah, on behalf of Mount Almer, I will continue the presentation until he can join us again. So we did this regional study with our expert between 2020 and 2021. And from the regional assessment, we found out that oil spills and marine litters are 2 major concerns for the Arafura and Timor Sea region. And from our modeling, we also found out that the southern coast of Timor and Rote Island are the most vulnerable to oil spill incidents. We will encourage you to read the report. If you're interested, you can scan the QR code here, or you can also visit our website. Okay, and Mount Almer, if you're ready, please jump in. If not, then I will continue. So as I apologize for the technical issues, but yeah, as explained by Norman, the webinar objectives is to enable information sharings amongst and also to build capacity of the ATSEA stakeholders on oil spill preparedness and response. And to do so through this webinar, we designed it so that the topics are progressive, starting from awareness of oil spill impacts to understanding of oil spill risk and what it takes to respond to oil spill incident effectively. We also like to introduce some key principles involved in preparing for and responding to oil spill incidents throughout these webinars. So this is just a brief overview of the previous webinar we had. So for the first webinar, it was attended by 76 participants from 8 countries. And then 2 our distinguished speakers from OSRL shared about first the causes and fates of marine oil spills. And second is on the impacts of marine oil spills. And for the Q2 webinar, it was attended by 66 participants from 10 countries. And for the second webinar, our experts first talk about surveillance, modeling, and visualization, what and why of MSV, the available tools, and also a case study from Sri Lanka. And then the second speaker talk about the different response strategies, starting from cone of response and the use of dispersion, in situ burning, at-sea containment and recovery devices, and finally the shoreline cleanup. And the second presentation was wrapped with case studies from Indonesia and Sri Lanka. So in this Q3 webinar, as stated in the e-flyer, our speaker, Mr. Ali Haider Alatas, will share with us about net environmental benefit analysis, or NEBA, or the spill impact mitigation analysis, or SIMA. So in his presentation, we'll hear more about what is NEBA and SIMA, and also the process to do that. And lastly, as mentioned by Norman, we also will hear from Mr. Johnson Maren on PNG's oil spill case study that, yeah, I trust it will be really interesting. And that is all from us. Thank you. Back to you, Norman.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie, and thanks, Mon Almer. So we apologize to everyone because of the intermittent internet connection in Timor-Leste. So to continue on, just a quick sharing about OSRL. So OSRL is the world's leading global oil spill response specialist since 1985. So we have attended to a lot of spills already. And OSRL is wholly owned by most of the environmentally responsible oil and gas and energy companies who actually represents the majority of the global oil production. And we provide global, we're the integrated provider for surface and subsea source control services. So if you're a member, you will have gained access to the full suite of expertise for our response and preparedness on a global basis. So just a quick summary who we are. We are the largest international industry funded cooperative. We are owned by major oil and gas production, transportation, and energy companies. And we provide resources to prepare for and respond to oil spills efficiently and effectively on a global basis. So that's Oil Spill Response Limited. So I will end my session there, but to all our participants, you can proceed to type in your questions in the chat box as early as now or during the presentation. So again, as I mentioned, do not worry if your questions are not read or not answered today. OSRL will release an online article after this webinar to answer all the questions that you have that we missed out during the plenary. So without further delay, our first presenter is Ali. Ali will talk about the NEBA and SIMA. So Ali, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I believe everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, Ali.
Okay, I think it's nice that Cassie have run through the web series that you already went through the webinar. The second one, I think is nicely tied up with the next section that I'll bring about is the net environmental benefit analysis, NEBA, and SIMA, spill impact mitigation analysis. So So what we like to achieve on this session is to understand the principle of NEBA and SIMA. So what is NEBA and SIMA? This is the two names that we usually hear when we're talking about spill incident, understand the impact of different environment sensitivity, socio-economic sensitivity. This is the norms that we always look when we're talking about looking at environmental impact or socio-economic impact when there's one spill. Understand the relevancy of SIMA and how it's used, because this is one of the tools that we believe they can support to understand the impact and then to assess the situation, how we will act in terms of response, what is option the best, and that will be the best tools right now in terms of one of the tools that we can use for assessing oil spill impact. Summarize later, we're going to look at the SIMA process as a whole and understanding from the start how we look at different data and understand. Actually, this is also connected with the previous webinar when we're talking about fate of oil, when we're talking about response option. This will come up in a later slides that I'm going to talk about. So what is a net environmental benefit analysis? There's actually a video that is actually nicely summarized it. So this video itself is actually developed by the IPCA. So IPCA is the industry corporate organization that is usually in charge to roll out some of the guidelines from the industry best practice. So I will start the video. Later on, we will discuss a bit more in terms of implementation.
We use oil every day, and not just in our cars.
Ali, the video is on pause.
The video is paused, huh?
Yeah,
Let's try again. I don't know. This pause.
yeah. I think there's some sort of delay,
Yeah.
perhaps because of the internet connection.
It's running now. Let me start over again. Sorry, guys. Apologize.
We use oil every day, and not just in our cars. And as this resource is delivered through the oil supply chain, we have to work together to protect our shared values. Shared values such as sensitive ecosystems, local businesses, health and safety, tourism and recreation, and regional industries. The best scenario is to never have a spill. In the event that a spill occurs, there is a process in place to minimize impact to the environment and the community. How can we work together to proactively protect our shared values before an event occurs? The key to minimizing the impact of a spill is to respond quickly by carefully pre-selecting response tools before an incident. We have a navigational guide for selecting the right response tool. We use 4 steps to evaluate 4 factors. We first look at effectiveness. Which tool will remove the most oil? We also evaluate feasibility. Which tool can be physically and safely executed? Understanding the effectiveness and feasibility of response options, we then consider the specific environmental sensitivities and the community impacts. We use the net environmental benefit analysis to determine which tool will minimize impact on the environment and the community. After understanding the effectiveness, feasibility, and environmental and social impacts, we then determine if the response options we've selected comply with regulations. Today we're going to talk about the work we do to evaluate the environmental and social or community impacts of oil spill response. Net Environmental Benefit Analysis, or NEBA, is a process used by the response community for making the best choices to minimize impacts of oil spills on people and the environment. Before a spill occurs, NEBA requires the identification and prioritization of environmental and community assets based upon environmental sensitivities and social values. Outcomes are predicted by reviewing and comparing previous spill cases, including restoration considerations, to understand potential impacts. During the NEBA process, environmental and social impacts are weighed to determine effective oil spill response tools and balance trade-offs. NEBA also establishes plans and puts pre-approvals in place to support environmental and social values. NEBA, or the Net Environmental Benefit Analysis, allows proactive pre-selection and planning to inform a response. This improves organization, communication with the community, and plays a critical role in protecting the environment. Help us in achieving our goal of a rapid and unified response by partnering with us before a spill, participating in conversations with industry on a regular basis, joining us for drills and exercises in your community, and supporting efforts to put plans and pre-approvals in place before a spill. Through effective preparation, we can create a quicker and more efficient response together. Protecting the environment requires a speedy response. NEBA makes that possible.
Okay, that is the video. So later on, I will just summarize. It's actually the presentation. We'll actually look at the video in terms of the 4 stages: evaluate data, predict the outcome, balance trade-off, and then which one is feasible in terms of looking at different response options. Okay. Need to pause this one. Sorry. Yeah. So what is net environmental benefit analysis? So it's aimed to decrease the overall effect of an oil on the environmental and socio-economic resources while achieving acceptable standard of a cleanup. Because in the end, what we want to achieve is when we're doing spill response is we want to minimize the impact to the environment, the impact to the social economy. And this is actually what we want to achieve. By looking at the impact itself, look at the response option that we have, different toolkits. I mean, Cassie did brought up, we did the webinar before, we're talking about different toolkits, SC contaminant recovery, dispersants, in situ burning. This is all the toolkits that we're gonna see. And this toolkit actually help you to minimize the environmental impact to any of environmental sensitivity or social economy. So benefit versus damage of cleanup. Again, it's something that we always want to see when we choose any action. We always want to see, is there any positive outcome or negative outcome? We don't want to do more in the end quick damage, or we also don't want to choose the wrong tools that is inside the toolkits. And as well look at the advantages versus the advantages of different spill response option versus natural recovery, because possibly leaving it to the environment by doing other thing in the response toolkits, which is there's other process in terms of response that probably people see is nothing. For example, like what we're talking about, surveillance, modeling, visualization. Although we are not doing most tasks and hands-on deploying equipment, but probably this is the best option to go with. For example, if there's spill in mangrove area, the oil's already impacted mangrove. So probably if we go inside with a big equipment, big machinery, it will damage the ecosystem of mangrove itself. So this is some evidence to look at disadvantage of this threat versus advantages of different toolkits or against natural recovery as well. So which option to choose? So this is where NEBA and later on SIMA as a tool will help us to look on the toolkits that we have, and from the impact that we gather from the data, we will definitely have a better option to choose which more efficient, which have a lesser impact to the environment, which actually have more benefit, more positive outcome, and so on. So spill impact mitigation analysis. So this is what we call a SIMA. So again, a NEBA is the concept. So SIMA sometimes is more in terms of the tools itself, because this concept look nice is in terms of looking at the environment, but NEBA also doesn't look nice in terms of perception, because the associate of the word benefit, because in the end, if there's a spill, we don't see actually any benefit to the environment. We always see that there's always negative outcome in state to the environment. So there's a bad perception when we look at NEBA as well. And how to look at how to get all the stakeholders involved, because when we're talking about NEBA or SIMA, this is where actually the time we gather different stakeholder, different expert. When you're talking about different environmental sensitivity, for example, if we have oil spill impacted mangrove, then we're going to talk with the people that actually have knowledge specialized in mangrove ecosystem and so on, to understand what are the better way in terms of clean up the mangrove and so on. So something that we might have a better knowledge, and we can wrap up in a nice way in terms of looking at advantage and disadvantage. Again, the principle unchanged. What we want is we want to see how the spill impact is mitigated using the different response toolkits. And again, looking at the data, looking at the response toolkit, feasible outcome, predict the outcome, again, choose the better option. So what guidance material there? So actually, this is something that it was developed by the industry itself, by IPCA. So IPCA working with different organizations as well with Oil Spill Response Limited, our company. We have several people that writing and the guidance. So it started by NEBA choosing spill response. It was published in 2000, but later on retired because we published a new edition with 2015, talking about response strategy, looking at using NEBA. And then we come at 2017 just to have a better aspect on looking at NEBA, because NEBA is still a concept, a principle, but SIMA is more a methodology to carrying out NEBA. So in a better way, it's just a tool, it's one of the tools to achieve net environment benefit analysis, looking at how the outcome of response, which is advantage or disadvantage using a response option. So again, principle of NEBA and SIMA, facilitate transparency and stakeholder involvement. Again, I think the video did mention to us, this is the time where we gather a lot of people. Actually, when we're talking about NEBA or SIMA, the best time to do it is during a peacetime. So when we do it, when it spill happen, it's a bit, it's not wrong to use it when you have an incident, but it's just better when you have time, when you look at the environmental impact, when you want to start your operation, when you want to prepare your oil spill contingency plan. So this is actually the best way to have NEBA, because you need to have a very a nice conversation between all the stakeholders involved. Like probably if talking socio-economic, you need to talk with the fishermen, fishing village, head of fishermen. So this is something that probably we need to bit prepare in terms of. That's why I'm saying that the time to do it is probably in peacetime. Target larger and higher consequence of oil spill, okay, because it's not only looking at the environment. We're talking about socio-economic, we're talking about economic loss, we're talking about different area that is quite sensitive to a country or to an area as well. Again, to promote pool response toolkit, not just for this person. Although when we talk about later on, we look at SIMA calculation, it seems like this person is always an option to go. But it depends on the scenario, because if the incident happened in inshore where you have shallow water, then of course this person is something that it will bring a more negative outcome. Will in the end, when you do SIMA, you will actually have a less efficient as well. Integrate ecological and socio-economic culture and consideration as well, because beside the ecological impact, you will have socio-economic people that living there will probably lose their livelihood if they have some area where they do fishing and so on. And also cultural consideration. Later on, we'll talk about where SIMA look at different cultural significance. If you have sacred temple or you have any location that we believe by the inhabitants or by the local people, that is something that is pressure for them or for the religion as well. So SIMA process is start again looking back. I think this is something that we saw in the video. So this is the 4 stages that we look at. So the first one is evaluate data. So actually, if you go through the webinar again, I will bring up a lot of webinar that the ATSEA team did. So it's actually have the same stages. Where stages 1, you look at what oil fleet, you talking about resource at risk, and then stage 2 talking about predict the outcome, what is the impact of the environment, what is the prediction of the oil. You can use modeling, you can use visualization, and then balance trade-off. Look at dialogue to key stakeholders, the total impact mitigation score, and ranking for each response option is agreed. So SIMA actually, in a way, helping us using NEBA, but having a better option to look at the qualitative side, because some point in the NEBA, if you talk about subjective, people will say in more subjective a bit hard, but in SIMA is helping the process to be qualitative and quantitative, so every people can see the scoring and efficient as well. And of course, the stage 4 is select the best option using the process. Later we're going to discuss, we're going to see what actually option is feasible on that scenario as well. So for example, here we just have a nice sample of, sorry, I think I'm a bit too fast. Okay, so this is an example for spill scenario. So for example, we have a spill, and this is the area of the map on your right side. You can see the area of map. There's a spill, which is the 0.1. It's a crude oil, so you can see it's not light, but it's also a bit medium to light oil. So it's from vessel pollution. Then this, of course, you can see for the map itself, there's a lot of sensitivity area there. It's not only talking about ecological, talking about the environment as well, but we're talking about socio-economic, like fishing area, industrial water, response base, and so on. So the volume was spilled just for estimate 1,000 tons. So this one, later on, we're going to discuss how we use SIMA as stages to look at how we will try to respond to this type of spill that we have using a SIMA stages. So if we have that kind of scenario, what we're going to do first is evaluate the data. What is the credible potential release scenario? Okay, we're talking about 1,000 tons, but sometimes probably not 1,000 tons. It will be not like the instantaneous release, which is you have 1,000 tons straight away. Okay, you will need to look how you can evaluate that data. One of the things we can do one of the things in the response toolkit of response, you can do modeling, you can do trajectory, all freight and trajectory modeling to look where the spill moving. Is it going to more sensitivity area where you have impacted the economy or the ecological as well, and as well to determine the resource at risk. Looking on the map earlier, probably you can see there's different resource at risk. You can see fishing village, you can see industrial water tank, as you see response bases, you see coral reef and so on. So by evaluating data, we know what the spill can impact it too. So like I mentioned, evaluate data, what the scenario choose. Okay, we did talk about scenario. What is the environmental setting? Looking at the map, what are the possible resources at risk? Identify what are the data, ecological, socio-economic. For example, if near sandy beaches, is this where the seasonal turtle nesting and so on? This is something that probably we will try to engage the local authority, Department of Environment, or probably this is something that if we're talking about spill incident that caused by oil and gas industry, they'll probably have this information on their oil spill contingency plan or the ESI, environmental sensitivity index, when they are doing their own production. So after looking at the data itself, then we can come up, okay, look like if the spill heading to shoreline in 12 or 14 hours ahead, then probably we can think of probably we need to look at different response toolkit. We can look at dispersion. In the end, we want to try to minimize the oil impacted the shoreline. Probably we can use dispersion. We can do containment recovery. When I say containment recovery, it's a simple way. You deploy a boom, which is gonna contain the oil in the water. Then you're gonna deploy skimmer, so we're gonna skim as well. So make sure we are trying to use all the toolkit that we have that is available, so we can actually choose an efficient one. India will not might choose one. We probably need to combine several response option. I think if we talking about earlier webinar, I think actually talking response con. So response con actually how we can use all the different response toolkit by try to put it in a way for location wise, like near to incident area, you can use containment recovery, you can use boom to contain the oil, then skimmer, then after that you can use your dispersion, and closer to the shoreline, you can use your shoreline response as well. So going back to the scenario, it's a group 2 oil is 1,000 ton. Of course, looking at the map, we know the resources at risk. There's shorebird colony, so you can see here the modeling is heading to the west area, the island, which is having important shorebird colony, fishing area, and mangrove. And the response option that probably you can think about just for the scenario is like containment recovery, surface dispersion, and in situ burning. So this option later on, we're gonna use SIMA in terms of qualitative process. So after that, predict the outcome. So actually, what is the outcome if the oil hit the these resources at risk? The one we're talking about, like the shorebird colony and the fishing area. So what is the outcome? So after that, we will understand what will be the outcome to the sensitivity of environment and socio-economic as well. So what we do usually before we go back to the drawing board in terms of looking at the predict the outcome, we need to set a baseline. So the baseline will be no intervention. So when we talk no intervention, we not actually we actually try not to do anything. We will look at how natural recover and how's the impact when there's nothing in place. This will give an impact mitigation score against the resource categories, and then identify potential ATSEA response option for specific area. Again, typical potential response option as well. No intervention will be your baseline, or you were talking about natural recovery, then you have on water containment recovery, subsea dispersion injection. If it is a subsea blowout case, for example, the BP Mokando in 2010 incident, that's probably one of the response option that they did as well, subsea dispersion injection. Surface dispersion application using vessel or aircraft, control in situ burning, and shoreline booming, especially if we know that the oil will impact the shoreline in a short time. So using the resource compartment, we know the location of the oil. Of course, when the oil spill, you're gonna definitely hit the water surface. When you're talking water surface, it's definitely something that is high impact. Okay, so it's high impact. The score is 4, and then you're talking water column. Usually, the oil will disperse to the water column about 10 meters underwater column. Of course, there will be impact as well. And then we assess different resource as well. You can see when we're talking about relative impact, score 1, which is no insignificant for socio-economic. If there's no intervention, it's a bit low impact. I guess again it determine, okay, how you determine the scoring. Actually, this is where you need to discuss together with different stakeholders, different expertise, local agency, people that actually going to affected on the oil spill itself. So again, this is something that we need to discuss together when we actually do the qualitative scoring. So this is where the non-intervention lies. So we can see water surface, the impact's quite high, the score is 4. So later the scoring will help us look at the total score for different response option. So this is the response option that we choose: containment recovery, surface dispersal, in situ burning, and shoreline booming. So this is just example. So in real life, you will have more response option that you can use, of course, using the guideline that is set by oil spill response, and how we advise you from our technical advisory point of view. So determining resource compartment, you see that we did discuss there on the table. You see there's a water column, water service, air, shorelines, high value resources. You determine it by the data that you got earlier. So where's the spill is the spill gonna impact any shoreline, socio-economic, cultural? Then you will write down the resource compartment nicely as a comparative starting for no intervention. Again, it is important when carrying out the SIMA to only select the resource subcategory applicable to the situation. Okay, for example, it's far offshore, it's like probably 100 kilometers from shoreline. Of course, you cannot use shoreline as your water column, as your resource compartment, because in the end, based on the modeling, you want to reach shoreline as well, then you should not use it. So again, try to adjust where you can use the different compartment as well. So just for a big discussion, we're talking about different resource compartment. What is water column? So usually water column is upper 3 to 5 meters of water column from surface spills. So for subsea release, of course, the water column will be from the below the vicinity of the oil plant. The degree to so when talking about relative impact, usually this is something that we took from the good practice developed by IPCA. So degree to which species residing in the water column are impacted on the dissolved concentration and toxicity of oil. So again, what are the ecological that living there, and what will be the impact to them, for example. So water surface, of course, we understand you have a lot of biota that live in water surface, seabird, marine mammals, and so on. So the relative impact might be a bit higher. So it will cover potential significant numbers. So usually quite high relative impact. It's very rare that you put low relative impact when talking water surface, because it's definitely normally where all the living things or biota living in the water surface. So, but again, it also might seem the water column. Again, this is something, again, I did discuss this, something that we need to talk together with different stakeholders and different experts. Shoreline, of course, there will always a presence of ecological habitat, particles that are vulnerable and valuable to oil. We have sometimes some different shoreline, different country. That's where seasonal turtle nesting, and you can see that it's very important to different habitat and biota as well. Degree and extent of oil. Again, when what we always try to advocate is we don't want the spill reach shoreline, because when the spill reach shoreline, the impact is going to be so big. And again, if you talk about oil fate, because when you spill, for example, 1,000 tons of oil, the one that can impact the shoreline maybe can be 10 times of it, for example, because again, oil is spreading, fragmented, just how we discussed when we're talking about oil fate. But again, it will depend on the type of shoreline as well. We're talking about sandy shoreline where there's limited biological abundance and productivity, probably low relative impact. And then exposed rocky shoreline, again, this is quite high productive area where you have a lot of high wave energy, so you probably have a low relative impact as well. Shelter shoreline where actually you have a lot of habitat living there, and probably can definitely warrant high relative impact as well. Socio-economic, again, we did talk about shoreline. Of course, shoreline have different type. You have sandy, you have rocky. But of course, if that's sandy shoreline, you have people that living there, people that is now having the livelihood actually attached to that. And then we're talking about different type of socio-economic, where you have commercial, recreational, tourism, water sport, commercial shipping, and water intakes. Again, how you look in terms of relative impact, you will definitely look at the financial losses, especially when you're talking about tourism, fishing. Of course, some people this is I can say very sensitive subject to some people, because of course some people will probably depend on this sensitivity area. So again, especially also for water intakes, if the local population actually have a dependency on the local impact, and can be put as a high relative impact as well. Culture, I guess this is something that we commonly have especially in our Asian culture. I guess people are known quite respect to the sacred land, ancient building, and artifact as well. So again, the relative impact of this location will be depend on the degree and the extent of exposure of oiling, and of course need to discuss with the people that is having expert and the stakeholder that is involved as well. So we did discuss about predict outcome no intervention. So again, this just for example for seabed area, you're talking about one because rarely an oil can go down to the seabed, except there is a very shallow water as well. So usually oil when we talk about oil freight, usually will disperse between 10 meters below surface water or 20 meters below surface water as well. Yeah. So again, relative impact one is saying sorry. So one is no insignificant impact will be one, and then low impact will be two, medium impact will be three. For example, we put here shoreline mangrove. Of course, if we identify the oil will hit mangrove, it is something that we believe a high impact, because we know mangrove is quite important in terms of our life, not only for people that are living there, not only for ecosystem, but I think mangrove is one of the root of the essence of a shoreline sometimes. And then we're talking about balance trade-off. We're looking at the response option. We do have response option, and we already have some data for no intervention. Again, going back the scenario we're talking about, there is a seabed, then you use the no intervention. Then for the response option itself, it will be different. You use impact modifications as a factor. So like we say, environmental setting, resource sensitivity, resource option, effectiveness, these have to be in a dialogue. Like I did mention before, it's always the base time to do NEBA or SIMA is always on the peacetime, because when there's a spill incident, it's very tough to gather all the stakeholder and to have a valuable discussion. So again, this discussion also going to look at determine impact modification factor for each resource compartment and option. So this one will be for every type of response option. You can see that we block white the subsidy disbursement, because probably this is something that is not related to well blowout. So this is some response option that we feel that not feasible for surface option. So to calculate the impact mitigation response for each resource compartment and option, then you will have the scoring. So to calculate it, then you will use the intervention and time the impact modification factor, then you will have the relative impact mitigation score. So for example, using no intervention for water surface, the impact might be medium. And then if you use containment recovery in terms of positive, if quite positive can be 1, quite high, then the result will be 3. So again, impact modification factor. So it's a bit different for relative impact. So the impact modification factor is actually to score the response option, how it helped in terms of minimize the negative impact of oil spill. For example, score 3 will be major mitigation of impact. If you use this response toolkit, you can manage to not saying make the oil disappear, but at least reduce the concentration of oil in the water. Then you can of course, reduce the impact to the environment and ecological as well. So the score is given for each response technique in correlation with each resource as well. So we're going by the resource, and then we're going by the response option as well. So for surface water oil spill, again, for example, I think the example that we showed earlier is a surface water oil spill from vessel pollution. So you can see the first stage will be no intervention. So no intervention is using potential relative impact. What will be the impact, high relative impact? And then you're going to use the impact modification factor for different containment, response option. So after do the calculation, so again, looking at different impact modification factor for containment recovery. For example, we can take shoreline mangrove. So if you're talking about shoreline mangrove, you don't do any intervention, then the impact to the environment probably high. But how about if you do containment recovery? Okay, there's probably positive impact is a minor mitigation impact is slightly positive. So you can put one, then the relative impact will be potential relative impact time the impact modification factor, then it will be 4. And if you're talking about other thing, for example, if we choose in situ burning, then for example, for some different compartment, okay, go back to in situ burning. If we choose in situ burning for the mangrove compartment, when we do in situ burning, then probably we only have small residue of oil, so it's only going to impact a small area of mangrove. So the impact modification factor can be big, can be 3. So you can see 3 times 4 will be 12. So stage 4 is looking at the best option from different response option that we looked at earlier, from the non-intervention to the response option. So predict the outcome. So look at the when we're talking about evaluate data, then when we predict the outcome, we use the baseline, which is the no intervention. Look at the resource compartment based on the information that we have, environmental sensitivity, socio-economic sensitivity, and then we will look at impact modification factor and so on. So this is actually later, I think Norman will share you the reference that we have from the IPCA. So this, you can access the information from the IPCA best factor for the spill impact mitigation score as well. So again, the first stage is predict the outcome, the third stage is balance trade-off, and the fifth stage is total impact to the mitigation score. So look at this, you can see the highest efficient or scoring will be dispersion. Again, probably dispersion is the best because it will help the oil to break down into water column and will be eaten by microorganism, and in the end it will help reducing the impact to the shoreline as well. But not always the case that dispersion will be the #1 option. But again, we do not say that we're going to use dispersion only, but we always nice to have all the toolkits that we have. That's why we did advise how we use the response score in terms of using different response option at different stages of response. So no intervention. So this is the effectiveness of response by using the scoring from the no intervention and using different of response option. So the score for each response option are the then total the base of metric for each response option. So that will be the high total score that we're gonna see for everything. So using all the resource compartment. Again, 4 is where you select the best option. So actually that's where SIMA actually help a lot in terms of NEBA. So it's actually give a better qualitative, especially when we talk about different decision response option, and we need to justify this, and SIMA will definitely help. So key takeaway, I believe I did introduce what is the principle of NEBA and SIMA. In the end, what we want to achieve is making sure that the action that we take actually help to achieve our objective, which is when talking about oil response, the objective is always to minimize the impact to the environment, minimize impact to the socio-economic also people that are living there. Again, understand the relevancy of SIMA. So SIMA, again, this is methodologies that gonna help NEBA in terms of making justification. making us do the correct step when we're talking response option. And again, I believe we went through the process for stage 1 to stage 4 in terms of how we use SIMA. It will be by qualitative scoring, using the relative impact for no intervention, then impact modification factor for response option. So I believe this is nicely round up what we use of SIMA. If there's any question, I believe later on Norman will help to facilitate on the plenary hall. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. That's a good presentation. Again, to our participants, if you have questions, please do type that in your chat box. But I do have one question with you, Ali, with regards to your example. So your example, you calculated some numbers and then you rank them from 1 to 4.
Yes.
Does that mean that if I'm one of the decision maker, do I always, or can I choose just the ranking one, or could I use combination of it? I mean, I could choose say 1, 2, 3, or I could choose the first and second top response options, or I am just constrained to using the first or the number 1 response option. What is your take on that?
Again, I did echo this quite nicely. I mean, the idea of this is just helping to look at the effectiveness when using it. I think we need to be smart. I think if you use it properly in different stages, I think different response toolkit can help you. I did mention if we draw back again to the response con, when we're talking response con, actually for some mechanical recovery that we usually we're going to advise them near the source of spill. So it definitely can help make the oil speed spreading. So actually, it's not about looking at the right ranking, but the ranking definitely help you in terms of efficiency. But our suggestion is always try to use different combination of response toolkit, placing it at the location where we feel there is definitely have efficient result on that one.
So basically, Ali, what you're saying is that the ranking provides me an indication how effective it is.
Yes.
But definitely I could still use combination of the response options. So I'm not just constrained to the most effective. I could still use combination of it, depending on the situation.
Yes, correct. Norman, you just nicely summarized the
all right. Thank you. Right. So thank you, Ali. We will be having you again later for the plenary. So for our participants, again, I would like to encourage you to ask questions, and I will quickly share this my screen just to show you that we have our attendance and feedback form. So there's a link that was shared to you in the chat box. So please click that so that we will know whether you would like to have a certificate. So that feedback form will also ask whether you would like a certificate for this webinar. If you are not able to click that link, please refer to your screen. There's also a QR code which you can scan that will lead you to the attendance and feedback form as well. So thank you for that. And then the next speaker that we have is one of our good friend from Papua New Guinea, Mr. Johnson Maren. Johnson is the Senior Pollution Officer in National Maritime Safety Administration of Papua New Guinea. So Johnson will be sharing an interesting case study with regards to a spill that happened in Papua New Guinea. So Johnson, my good man, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Norman. You can see me?
Yeah, definitely can see you.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, all our participants, speakers, and friends who are now watching or listening in to the webinar this afternoon. My name is Johnson Maren. I'm the Senior Pollution Inspector with the National Maritime Safety Authority of Papua New Guinea. Basically, this afternoon, I will be presenting a case study on the palm oil spill that happened at the beginning of this year, which was in May, 15th of May, in one of the northern provinces of Papua New Guinea. Later on, I can give you a view of where this oil actually took place. You may be wondering, talking about palm oil, and you are thinking, oil spill, what is it going to do with palm oil? But of course, characteristics are different. But you are seeing it as a spill, you can attend to it using the same techniques. Okay, this is the case study of the palm oil spill in Papua New Guinea. Moving forward to my second slide, it's just the overview of the actual location or place where the oil has spilled. You can see all the tanks. These are all the reservoirs, the storage facility for the crude palm oil. So let's assume that all those tanks are full at this stage, and you just imagine if all of them happen to spill the crude palm oil onto the sea, then that's going to be another natural disaster, I guess. Okay, the spill location you can see on the Google map there. The blue, if you can see from wherever you are, there should be a blue circle. That is the location from the tank, the reservoirs that I showed you previously. And the red marking along the coastline westward is the approximate distance where the crude has drifted during the spill. So it kind of almost 4 kilometers west along the local community from the spill, initial spill location westwards. Okay, this is the geographical map of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea, as you said, as you know, we are made up of so many little underlying islands. So the red here is basically where the New Britain Island is. The New Britain Island is consisted of 2 provinces, east being on the east, New Britain, and west on the west New Britain part. That's where the oil, New Britain palm oil is. So this is the location where, and imagine if we had to respond, NMSA head office will be here in Port Moresby. And of course, we have other offices also in other provinces in Ley, Medang, Wewak. Vanimo is the closest town to Indonesia, and Rabaul on the east. That's where the office of the National Maritime Safety Authority is currently located. Of course, in Alatau, the most southern tip here in Million Bay, and Moresby, of course, is the main office of the National Maritime and Safety Authority. Just for your information, National Maritime Safety Authority is the competent authority governed under the law to protect activities in the marine environment and the 5 elements of the pollution at sea. So it is an authority mandated by law to oversee activities that happen on and within the marine environment and the exclusive 200 nautical miles of our national waters. Okay, this slide basically is a source of spill. You can see up here the type of oil. As I said earlier, it's a crude palm oil. A source of spill from the storage tank valve failure that was unsecured during the process of loading the export tankers, and let's assume to be a man-made error. There was no lookout at the time, So it was anticipated between 2 and 3 a.m. on the 15th of May this year, 2022. One of the tanks which was discharging of oil from the facility to the loading vessel leaked out. They were estimated 50 metric ton or 50,000 ton of crude palm oil was actually leaked out to sea through the drainage system within the facility. And the tank itself contained about, capacity is about 150 metric ton. 50 of the metric ton was considered a spillage, and it was discovered at 0500 hours the following morning. By then, the message was already out to responsible agencies, and of course, National Maritime Safety Authority. We've got search and rescue as our 24/7 watch. They received this information, and eventually the RACO of the organization NMSA was advised. And the Maritime Environment Protection Department, the team consisted of the manager and the officers departed on the Monday of the same weekend. They flew over to Kimber to oversee the spill containment activity. Okay, this was basically the assessment made during the spill. It was assumed that 50,000 tons of crude palm oil into the drainage from the unsecured valve to the drainage, and subsequently it was discovered in the early hours of the morning. The estimated the spill happened between 0 to 100 and 300, but as I said earlier, it was discovered about 5 o'clock in the morning. Upon delivery, the unsecured valve was closed. It was taken care of. And unfortunately, the 50,000 crude oil was already out at sea and floating westward towards the local surrounding villages. Still in the assessment, as I said, the spill moved towards the west part of the location. See the red trail there, that is where the spill has actually moved that far. During the prevailing condition, the oil was observed to be very viscous, that the lumps of water were on floating on the sea surface. And you can imagine seeing the crude oil, natural crude oil, and vegetable oil and palm oil. Oil palm is one of they kind of have a same what's the best word I can describe here? We see oil float on the water. Of course, the palm oil was floating on the water, but it was in a close intact lumps, thicker, and it was much easier for recovery purposes. And basically, it was from the natural plant, so there wasn't too much of harm or dangers involved. We can see better later on the slides, but what the health occupational people have to advise the locals and the children about the safety of their well-being. So this is the responses. The responsible party, which is the source, spillage source, the personnel, of course, they were trained and they were able to, they were the first respondent, so they were able to contain the containment and recovery. I'll just read a little note here from what I gathered. NMSA and concerned stakeholders have conducted health, safety, environment, and social impact awareness campaign along the coastal villages. So, in the meantime, when the parties, the responsible parties, trained personnel were HNS personnel, so talking the coastals, NMSA team arrived. NMSA team arrived on a Monday. They supported by doing observing the cleanup around the coastline and carrying out awareness to locals, issued hand gloves, absorbent pads, and some absorbent booms. But all in all, most of the booms and tanks, whatever was provided by the concerned party. Some of the help that NMSA has provided was the refreshment of water, H2O to the locals and to people who were assisting during the actual cleanup of the oil. Okay, from here you can see this is some of the equipment NMSA has supplied to the locals during the oil spill response, palm oil spill response. From the background here, there's one of the tankers used to pump back the spillage into these tanks. The guys in the blue are NMSA officers from Port Moresby, and we have ATSEA personnel from the local company and locals, surrounding locals. Okay. The health and safety awareness included they moved the kids away from the spill area, and they also reminded the locals not to reuse the crude oil that has been removed or collected from the sea, as this might cause some health hazard to the locals. So that's when they told them not to use this oil for cooking or anything. They happened to, after cleanup, they asked everyone to do a proper wash down cleanup because of the potential of the skin rashes and irritation. And they also advised locals and those who assisted during the cleanup not to bring any naked lights, especially the matches that can cause ignition and that could trigger off fire, and that's not a disaster that we don't want to attend to during the spill itself. Okay, this is the response containment and recovery process. These are the booms that were deployed during the spill and contain all this yellowish crude palm oil. They will contain using the light booms. This was all done by the response team from the NBPOL. On arrival, the officers from NMSA were so amazed to see how quick this containment was. So later on in one or two of our slides, you can see it did not take more than a week or so for the containment and the recovery process. It's like taking the lid of the sink and all the water run off in no time at all. So that was one thing, an eye-opener also for the organization NMSA and also for the company itself that the spill actually occurred. These are more pictures. You're looking back that wharf, that's where these tankers, they come in, oil tankers, they come in to pump out all the crude palm oil from the tanks that I saw earlier. And so this is the vessel that was actually doing the loading for export when one of those valves was not physically tightened, whatever, looked at. So that's how the leak came about, and we have a spill. So these are some of the oil that's been contained in the boom, the light boom, and the locals are queuing up to capture them and put them in those tanks. Hose running from one of the wheelie bin pumping or sucking out the oil and onto the tanks, portable tanks that are on the sand. Okay, during the response containment recovery, you find that oil and gas companies in the area, they provide their own oil spill response equipment. This is also one of the things that NMSA enforces for any oil gas companies who are in the country. They would have a site plan, contingency plan. So we have officers in the monitoring department. They carry out inspections yearly, 6 monthly, quarterly, ensuring that the contingency plans are updated. And that was one of the part where the organization, the company responsible had is trained personnel and the booms readily available for such incidents. And that was the action that they took to contain the crude palm oil rapidly and on time. Okay, so this is the date on the 16th of May. You can see from here some of the crude palm oil that has drifted along the shoreline westward. That has, most of them have been contained within the source area, but whatever remaining was, you can see here. On the 17th, the following day, this is how the beach looked like. So from 16, after the containment and remainder of the oil on the beachfront shoreline, and this is what you see on the 17th, the following day. All this oil, whatever, were all cleaned up by locals and respondents who attended the spill. So it may be, it could be different from oil gas, the natural oil that we, for diesel fuel. It would have been a different scenario altogether. But because it's not that harmful, communities were using all other containment means from house dishes to bucket. They were not really waiting for any sophisticated equipment that can be deployed to get rid of oil. So this is what happened with the locals to assist in cleaning up their shoreline. And that's how far they've gone the following day to clean the entire shoreline. As I said, the locals use their own bins and containers, whatever they can find to recover crude palm oil. The wheelie bins provided by the responsible party were also used as containers. The temporary stored crude palm oil were pumped back into the portable tanks, tractors that came down, lined up at the waterfront. And the recovery crude oil were taken back by these tanks, portable tankers and tractors back to the factory. Responsible party for treatment and recovery for maybe future export. The responsible party has the facility there to also treat the recovered crude palm. And one other thing that for your interest only is the company also asked the locals that if they have to sell back the oil, the palm oil that they collected from the shoreline, so that gave them a financial, what can I say, some returns. So that made the people to really dig deep into containing the fuel, the oil, by collecting them on their own and selling back to the company. So that you can see that made the people to work hard in order to clean the shoreline, but at the same time they were selling back the discharged crude oil back to the company for some amount of money. So just some photo shots on the type of containers used, the wheelie bins, the 40-liter containers, buckets, any form of container. And this, of course, you see with banana leaves covered. These are the containers that will be sold back to the company. So whoever owns the bucket at least have some money in his pocket by the end of the day. Okay, whatever container or containment was equipment around cities, banana boat, they made good use of it by putting the oil back, getting ready for the company to pump it back into the portable tanks with the hoses already on standby. So that's how the people are so eager to clean the environment. And as I said, if it was for crude oil, diesel, and petroleum, then the scenario would have been a bit different. And this is also one of its first of its kind for a crude palm oil to spill out into the sea. So it was an eye-opener for National Maritime Safety Authority officers to go down and actually have a first hand on seeing an actual oil spill, actual spill in the form of vegetable palm oil, crude palm oil. These are the tankers from the company and the portable tractor with containers pumping out sucking back the oil, crude palm oil back into the tanks, and then of course they'll take it back to the refinery. Okay, the impacts. There was actually no wildlife impact as observed, both by NMSA and the responders from NBPOL. There were no visible environmental impact observed, as you saw from the images how clean the beach was. But there may be a potential impact on the coral reef from some sunken crude palm, the area beach that must have sunk into onto the reef, but they're yet to be ascertained by divers. To date, nothing has come to our notice regarding the oil that was assumed to be caught in the reefs under the sea. There was no visible impacts on the shoreline. There were a few complaints from the locals from their skin being rashes on the skin and irritation, but the complaints were managed by the health and safety department from NPPOL and also our community development officers from National Maritime Safety Authority with the good public relations, and it was all good. All good. Communities did participate. They understood. They were happy at the end of the day. First and foremost was the effort that they put assisting the company, NMSA, to make sure their beach shoreline was safe and free from crude palm oil. These are just pictures of how the shoreline looked a few days later, all the way. So just okay, this is the pictures of the tankers that normally come into the bay to pick up the crude, just to give an idea on what type of tankers come in. This is the sizes that they come in to collect the crude palm. And imagine also if there is a spill from these tankers again into the harbor, then the scenario hopefully will change, because by then they'll be away from the source, and maybe the crude palm would have drifted away from the shore. That would have made it difficult for the responders to contain at the first instance. So just to show you these pictures of these tankers, and then maybe we can just see two different scenarios: one from the tanker if it happens, and one from the shoreline which it happened and it was contained. Okay, this is the short conclusion. The Kimbe palm oil preparedness response was a success because there were trained personnel, and it was an efficient response by responders. One thing I said earlier, the National Maritime Safety Authority, being the responsible state agency, does not usually take lead in any types of oil. It is the industries that conduct or operate this business. But they are the first responders, they got equipment, and also they have their contingency plan, site plans, we call them. The site plans that we always, our team go down, do inspections, and they make sure they're up to date on par with whatever changes go about within the response, preparedness and response for oil. Okay, the palm oil was effectively contained and recovered by the responsible party, the personal assistance and assistance from local during the shoreline cleanup. It was observed no potential impact on the wildlife, on the marine environment, and there was no visible damage on the shoreline itself. The minor issues raised, as I said earlier, was from locals regarding skin rashes and eyes being irritated by the palm, but it was addressed by the health and safety and the NMSA's community development offices. Okay, one point I just want to make mention to our other resource speakers. PNG, National Maritime Safety Authority, has got an agreement in place with Oil Sales Response Limited in Singapore. So in the meantime, at the moment, they are working on our national contingency plan, and which is good. We are very much happy to be part of the professional organization who is a leading agency in the world to date, and we are pleased to be part and organization to be on board with OSR Singapore. And maybe one question I think we should have in mind, or you might be asking, is how do we classify this type of oil? Is it chemical oil, or is it oil as oil? Well, I think it's captured in our national plan, where the good man and Norman can maybe later on just emphasize to other presenters for their to give them a heads up of where NMSA PNG is now with national with Oil Sales Response Limited Singapore. And that concludes my presentation. But I'll have a good picture of all you smart people from the last meet that we together at the Singapore Maritime Gallery. Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see more of each other in the near future. And thank you, Norman.
Thanks, my good man, Johnson. All right, so can I get Ali to turn on your video as well? We are now at the plenary. We will try to answer the questions that our participants have. So Ali, can I get you to on your video?
Yes, hi, Norman.
Oh.
Yeah, and really interesting, Johnson, for your presentation. Really, the palm oil, really an eye-opening for us, because most of the time we are only thinking about hydrocarbon oil, but not really oil coming from, say, plant-based oil like the palm oil that you have. So we are now at the plenary, so we encourage our participants to write down your questions. So if you have one, so we have one question from one of our participants, and I think this one is directed to Ali. So Ali, the question is this: so does NEBA, or I think maybe SIMA as well, include any consideration of cultural, archaeological, or native rights? So basically that's the question. So does NEBA or SIMA include or consider this sort of I would say this is like a resource consideration?
Okay, Norman. Again, it's a good question. I guess this is where SIMA. Yeah, can you guys hear me now, Norman?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The video is a bit stopping by. Okay, I think this is where actually SIMA helping to look at the transition in terms of NEBA, which is look like is very environmental focus principle, but it's actually not. I mean, if you look at the resource compartment, the 8th resource compartment that we put, there's a high value resources. So this is actually where we put the cultural, archaeological artifact resource compartment that might be impacted by oil. And it did actually show up in one of the example where if there's an area that probably going to be impacted by a spill and it is sacred land and it need to have input from the local stakeholders. And this is something that we believe that will get impacted looking at the degree of oiling as well. Of course, the possibility. I guess this is where actually SIMA helped to look at a broader view, not only the environmental, ecological impact, but also socio-economic and also cultural sensitivity, I think, like the ecological and artifact. I hope this answering the question, Maren.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying, Ali, is that NEBA transitioning to SIMA or SIMA being a process under NEBA, basically SIMA now captures a lot more resource compartment, because most of the time if there's an oil spill, you only think about in terms of environmental and socioeconomic, but actually when you have the SIMA, you're also looking into other aspects, for example, your archaeological or cultural sort of heritage.
Yes, Maren.
Yeah. All right. I think let's see if there are any other questions. So we are encouraging our participants to type your question, and we hope that answers the question of Ian, because Ian made that question. So hope that answers the question. For Johnson, I think quick question, Johnson. So aside from you mentioned there were no impacts, but any complaints from the locals aside from the rashes that they developed, or anything else that they complained about?
No, man, not really. They were initially told before not to participate. They would talk to the leaders, the village councillors, all the leaders of the villages, telling them that this is an incident where the company will be responsible. However, because of the community engagement by the company, people were just, they couldn't help it. They wanted to help. So it's just that it wasn't a complaint, but they were just saying, oh, okay, this is what's happening to us. So then the responsible people from the health and safety court went down and told them, all right, you have to wash properly, rinse yourself like this and that, and you should not put your hands in the oil and start rubbing your eyes. So initially, like mistakenly, they were in a rush, excited about what they were doing, and they were touching the eyes. So when they were advised on the some do not to do thing, then I think from there they understood. They understood but that was some of this initial not more or less a complaint, but kind of a wake up thing that it was observed, but it was contained in a more amicable way by the safety and health and occupational safety people for the organization.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Johnson. That's a good thing happening in the spill, and I'm pretty sure there was a lot of lessons learned from that incident. I think we don't have a lot of questions for this webinar, so I'll just give a couple more minutes, and if not, then we will move to close out this webinar. But I guess I have one more question for Ali with regards to the NEBA and SIMA. So basically, Ali, what you have shown is an example of SIMA for, say, an offshore spill. But could that be tailor fit as well if, for example, the spill already reached the shoreline? Would SIMA could be tailor fit if, for example, your scenario is that the oil spill is already on the shoreline? Is that possible to do?
Yes, I think this is something that we did actually with Sarel. I think we did run workshop just to look if we can use SIMA specific for shoreline response, because in shoreline response, we're talking about different tools. In response, there's strategy, there's tactical. So this is also something that we can benefiting of using SIMA, different tactics when you try to clean up the shoreline. It might be having a good benefit to look at the resource compartment, and different tactic might have different positive or negative outcome that might present. And just to highlight again, yes, it's possible. We did that already, and I think a lot of people were quite appreciate how we did that using SIMA. But again, yeah, if it's possible to do it more specific, if it is near shore and shoreline.
Right, and I suppose if we do that SIMA for shoreline, then the resource compartment would also change. Is that correct?
Yeah, the resource compartment probably will be changed, looking at the more specific issue in different shoreline. Is it the top soil, the below soil, and so on? What is the habitat, and so on? It got to be specific as well. Just as SIMA will be different, the response strategy will not be shoreline response, but it's talking about tactical in terms of shoreline. Is it protecting the shoreline? Is it clean up using manual or clean up using mechanical? This is something that we can put as the response option.
Right. Right. Thanks, Ali. So I guess we don't have a lot of questions for this afternoon. So we will try to sum up what we have. So first and foremost, thank you very much for our resource speakers, to Ali and my man Johnson, and to our audience. Please do complete and submit the attendance and feedback form. You can see the QR code in your screens, and also I shared the link on the chat box. So please do complete that, and please do indicate on the feedback form whether you would like to have a certificate for this sharing. Just to let everybody know, we would like to see you again on our last webinar. So our last webinar will be scheduled in the Q4 of this year. And then you will be able to find the sign up for upcoming webinars in oil spill response website. And please do follow OSRL in Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Same thing for the ATSEA too. You will be able to follow them as well in the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So with that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and participation in this webinar. And we hope to see you in person soon. Until then, please keep yourselves and families safe and well, and have a good afternoon to all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Norman, and thank you, Ali. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, my man Johnson. Hope to see you again in Papua New Guinea.
Yes, we will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for hosting. Thank you, ATSEA, as well, for giving the time. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.